Just one more house. Kelly Staunton begged as her friend Katrina Phillips shook her head. They were driving 5 more miles than the normal speed limit, as they tried to put a few miles between them and the house they just robbed. How much tuition money did we steal tonight? Katrina asked. About $200. Kelly said, her voice trailing. How much do we need in all? Katrina asked, as the tinge of sarcasm escaped her lips. 5,000, Kelly answered, turning her head to look out the window as they pulled out into a street. I have an idea, Katrina said blankly as she again turned into another street. I've been house-sitting for a friend, and trust me, the house is loaded with cash, Katrina said. Yeah? Kelly asked, perking up. So we go and take what we need and make it look like a break-in, Katrina said. Kelly smiled and stared straight ahead. They drove for a few more minutes when they finally pulled up to a large house. Katrina pulled up the driveway and then pulled back into the street. What's up? Kelly asked, as they parked in a parking lot a few blocks away. Just making sure no one was there, Katrina said. The girls got out of the car and pulled on some ski masks. This way, Katrina said in a whisper. Ducking in some bushes, they made their way back to the house. Every time they heard a noise, they would stop and listen. Finally, they made it. Walking to the back of the house, Katrina unlocked the door and led Kelly inside. They stood in a kitchen area. Above their heads hung golden-looking frying pans and other kitchen utensils. I bet one of these would get me into school, Kelly said as she ran her hand over the fine polished pans. Katrina ducked into another hall as Kelly walked to the fridge. Licking her lips, Kelly realized she was thirsty. The doors to the fridge opened quite smoothly as she stared at the beverages. Everything from beer to whiskey looked good, but Kelly settled for a Pepsi instead. Closing the fridge, Kelly headed to the hall Katrina went into. It was pretty dark. Felling her way through the hall with one hand on the wall, she felt a flight of stairs. I better start somewhere, Kelly told herself as she headed up them. When she stepped on the top landing, she spotted a small light coming from one of the bedrooms. Katrina? Kelly said, in a whisper as she crept forward. She felt the door and walked through. A small nightlight was plugged into one of the sockets, but Kelly couldn't see where. Putting her hands in front of her, she walked forward. Her leg struck a cabinet, and she felt on top. Something hit the floor. Reaching down, she saw in the faint light that she grabbed a stack of bills. Kelly's heart pounded as she stuffed them into her pockets. When the lights came on, Kelly's heart froze. Turning around, she expected to see Katrina, but instead she saw a man. Hello, Kelly, the man said. Kelly slowly rose to her feet. How did you know my name? Kelly asked. My name is Edward Warden. My parents have a sense of humor, Edward said, ignoring her question. Edward stepped away from the door and the light switched as Katrina walked through the door. However, 2 other girls were holding her arms behind her back. Sorry, Kelly, Katrina said as she was jerked to the side behind Edward. Ah, so you have a friend, Edward said. Well, so do I, Edward said, turning to the 3. I want you to meet my 2 assistants, Sita and Rita, Edward said. Rita, a dark-haired girl, walked forward and bowed. Let's not make a scene, she said, holding out a pistol. Kelly flew back and hit the wall, knocking over the table and bills to the floor. Edward stepped up to her. Don't worry, she won't shoot as long as you cooperate, Edward said. Pulling out a handkerchief, he placed it over Kelly's mouth and nose. Kelly was too frightened of the gun to fight, but sleep came quick. Kelly's vision flickered as her eyes opened slightly. She had a hard time focusing, but the figure that stood over top of her helped her with that. It was Edward. Are you all right? He asked. Kelly couldn't answer, but when she looked down, she realized why. A medical mask had been placed over her mouth and nose, and a tube ran to a tank of unknown stuff. Kelly tried to move. Her arms had been duct taped from her wrists to her elbows. Her legs had been taped from her knees to her ankles. "Kelly, I bet you have some questions for me right now. But I have one for you." Kelly's vision was back to normal by now. "Like one of your questions would be like, what's going on? What are you going to do to me? Are you going to let me go?" Edward mocked her voice. "My question, however, is like, are you ticklish?" Edward said. Kelly's eyes went very wide. "You see, I'm a tickling enthusiast. I study tickling. I tricked her into house sitting and then bringing friends over. I didn't expect her to try and steal off me. But whatever works," Edward said. "So to give you a taste of what's to come, I've got Seta and Rita here." Edward turned to leave the room as the two grills entered. "You three play nice now," Edward said, laughing as he closed the door. Rita and Seta smiled as they came close to the table. "If you're wondering, we're the ones who tied you like this," Rita said, removing Kelly's medical mask. However, Kelly now realized she was still wearing her ski mask. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that you can't move any of your arm and leg joints, making you completely helpless, Seta said, as she moved to the opposite side of the thing that Kelly was lying on. Without warning, both girls began to tickle Kelly's underarms. Their dancing fingers inched around the hollows. Kelly held her breath and tried to slide her arms out from under the tape, but to no avail. Rita tickled under Kelly's chin as a smile appeared, and it was all over. Kelly laughed. The fact that she started laughing sent her body into a jerking motion. Kelly shook her head rapidly as the fingers of the two girls danced in the pits. Seta stuck her nose into her left pit and sniffed. "Kind of sticky," she said, squinting her nose. She opened her mouth slightly and began to lick the tender flesh. Kelly shrieked a bit and started laughing again. Rita got on the table and started to tickle both pits at once as Seta started to glide her nails over Kelly's nipples through her shirt. Kelly's eyes were wide open and her heart pounded furiously. Kelly kicked her feet, but doing this caught Seta's eyes. She skipped to them and removed her shoes and started to attack her bare feet, running her nails down the flats of her feet. Kelly kicked, laughed, and squealed all at the same time. Rita had given up on the pits and started to go for the belly. Tickling around Kelly's pant line was really fun. Kelly laughed. Seta started to lick between Kelly's toes. Each lick caused Kelly to kick even harder, but Seta had a good grip on them. When Seta got bored licking toes, she would hold them back and attack the heels, and then the middle and back to the toes. Every time she scratched Kelly's heels, Kelly would kick even harder, but it didn't do her any good. Rita had grown tired of the belly and started to tickle Kelly's pits again, and Seta was back at her nipples, running her nails swiftly and softly across them. Kelly's mind felt like it was about to explode. Her eyes were full of tears and her laughs turned into sobs. She was about to scream when Edward walked in. "Sorry girls, it's almost midnight," Edward said, smiling. The girls gave Kelly one more tickle everywhere before they left the room, smiling and winking. "Try and get some sleep," Edward said as he shut off the light and closed the door to a crying and shivering Kelly. To be continued.